Good afternoon, everybody. Hope you all had a good lunch here. We're going to get started with the afternoon session. How y'all feeling out there? Sleeping or what? All quiet.
Is everybody in like that lunch coma? Like, oh, I just had a good lunch and now I just want to take a nap? All right, well, do we need to do a couple of exercises, some stretches, some jumping jacks to get the blood flowing again? No? All right, so good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
That's better.
Well, squatchy siap nishayacha alaikum sensna atskunus ayam chatwa. Good afternoon. My name is Jonathan Arakawa, an enrolled member of the Lower Elwha Klallam Tribe in Washington State. I currently serve as the male co-president on the National Unity Council Executive Committee and honored to serve as one of your MCs for this afternoon session.
Halito Sahachufoya, Autumn Macmillan, Mississippi Chethasia, Hitcha Okla Hajmomaga Pambelinapa Ayachukma. Hello, my name is Autumn Macmillan. I come to you from Choctaw, Mississippi, an enrolled member with the Mississippi Band of Choctaw Indians, and it's great to see you all here today. And I am honored to be one of your afternoon MCs. It is my pleasure to introduce Keely Sanders, who will introduce our second panel focused on boarding schools and the Indian Child Welfare Act.
Hello all, my name is Keely Sanders, and I am Miss Cherokee 2023-24. I am representing Cherokee Nation. I am so happy to be with you all today. My platform is bringing awareness to Indian child welfare. I want to help others understand that they can help out in many ways with our children, but I also want to help the children understand where they come from, who they are, and what they can do is important. It's so important to help the children understand that if they stay within the tribe, that they can learn more about their own culture, their language, and their history of their people. For our youth panelists, I would like to introduce Maisie Countryman. She is an enrolled member of the Northern Arapaho tribe and is affiliated with the Eastern Shoshone-Bannock, and the Navajo Nation. She is a full-time student at Idaho State University, majoring and working towards her bachelor's degree in pharmacy. After she has pursued her bachelor's degree, she would like to obtain her doctorate in pharmacy. Roxy Sproul is a senior at Michigan State University. She works as an assistant in the Michigan Department of Health and Human Services, Children's Services Administration, in the Native American Affairs Department. Roxy is seeking to learn how to transform lived experience in action, change, and advocacy. Tyler Starr comes out as Ugala, Hunkpapa, and Minkuhun. Lakota from the Pine Ridge Reservation, she's a direct descendant of Chief Nowater, Chief Bigfoot. Learning of her family history motivates her to broaden perspectives of Indigenous knowledge and hopes to inspire younger generations in all communities. Wisdom is wealth. Our federal panelists today are Brian Newland is a citizen of Bay Mills Indian community, where he recently completed his tenure as tribal president. Prior to that, Brian served as chief judge to the Bay Mills Tribal Court from 2009 to 2012. He served as a counselor and policy advisor to the Assistant Secretary of the Interior Indian Affairs. He is a graduate of Michigan State University and the Michigan State University College of Law. Brian enjoys hiking and kayaking the shores of Lake Superior and is a nature photography enthusiast. Rosalind So, an enrolled member of the Navajo Nation, is the director of the Indian Health Service. The IHS is a principal federal department care advocate and provider of health care services of American Indians and Alaskan Natives. As director, Ms. So administers a nationwide health care delivery program that is responsible for providing preventative, curative, and community health care to approximately 2.7 million American Indians and Alaskan Natives in hospitals, clinics, and other settings throughout the United States. She previously served as the director of IHS Navajo area since 2019, where she was responsible for providing leadership in the administration of a comprehensive federal, tribal, and urban Indian healthcare system for over 244,000 American Indians and Alaska Natives throughout Arizona, New Mexico, and Utah. Ms. So began her career with IHS in 1984. She has served in various roles in IHS Portland area, both at the service unit level as the administrative officer for the Yakima Service Unit, and at the area level as the planning and statistical officer, equal employment officer, and special assistant to the arena director. In 2005, she assumed the role of director in the Portland area's Office of Tribal and Service Unit Operations, where she was responsible for the implementation of the Indian Self-Determination and Education Act and working directly with tribes. Prior to joining the Navajo area in 2019, she served as director of the Office of Direct Service in Contracting Tribes at AHS headquarters. Ms. So holds a Bachelor's of Arts in Interdisciplinary Studies from Marylhurst University in Portland, Oregon, and a master's degree in Organizational Management from the University of Phoenix in Portland. Patrice H. Kanish, of Standing Rock Lakota descent, is the Commissioner of the Administrative for Native Americans at the Administration for Children and Families in the U.S. Department of Human and Health Services. In her role as Commissioner, she serves as the Deputy Assistant Secretary of Native Affairs and Chair of HHS, Interdepartmental Council on Native American Affairs. Kanish has worked as Native American Rights Fund, where she began her legal career, and has served as an in-house counsel to Mushkentuket Pequot Tribal Nation. She also served on the faculty of the University of South Dakota School of Law. She held appointments as a Deputy Undersecretary for Rural Development at the U.S. Department of Agriculture and as the Deputy Solicitor for Indian Affairs at the U.S. Department of Interior. In addition, she established the Center for Indian Country Development and Economic Policy Research Initiative at the Federal Reserve Bank of Minneapolis. She founded Pehin Haha Counseling, a social enterprise committed to fostering culturally centered Native economic development, and she was appointed to U.S. Treasury Community Development Advisory Board, CDFI Fund, as a representative for Native communities. She holds a JD from the University of Colorado School of Law and an MPA from the Harvard Kennedy School of Government. I'd like to now hand it over to Roxy to begin our panel discussion.
Miigwech Keeley. I wanted to introduce myself in my traditional language. Buju ani Bejgo Noden Quain Indigenous Magazine and Dodem, Musquabe Kong, Minawa, Gichi Name Benezibing, and Donjaba, Nekwejang Nada. Hi everyone, my name is Roxy Sproul. That's my government name, but my Anishinaabe name, my spirit name is Bejgo Nodenkwe, which means First Wind Woman. I'm a citizen of the Red Cliff Band of Lake Superior, Ojibwe, out of northern Wisconsin, but I was born and raised in Marquette, Michigan, in the Upper Peninsula. And right now I live in Lansing. Our first question will be for Assistant Secretary Newland. Assistant Secretary Newland, can you share us an overview of the Department of Interior's Federal Indian Boarding School Initiative and the findings provided in Volume 1 of the report?
Miigwech, Roxy, and good afternoon, everybody. Ani Buju Ndinaway Maganaduk. My name is Brian Newland. I am a citizen of the Bay Mills Indian community, and I serve as Assistant Secretary for Indian Affairs. Under Secretary Holland's Federal Indian Boarding School Initiative, we're doing a couple of different things. One is we have undertaken this investigation, the first time the United States federal government has investigated its own role in establishing and operating these boarding schools to pursue a policy of cultural assimilation. And that investigation involves a review of federal records going back to the beginning of this policy. And so far, our team has reviewed more than 90 million pages of documents as part of this investigation over the last 2.5 years. It also involves the recently completed Road to Healing tour, which Secretary Holland and I have led across the country in 12 different places. We sat at a table in a large room, usually a gym, and listened to boarding school survivors or family members of people who went to boarding schools talk about their experiences there and put their stories on the record. And the third part of this investigation, or this initiative, involves the Oral History Project, where we are working with the National Boarding School Healing Coalition to take hundreds of hours of testimony from individuals who went to these boarding schools themselves, again, to build a federal record. And the goal of this entire initiative is for the United States federal government ourselves to hold ourselves to account for this policy and to tell the truth. And in telling the truth about these boarding schools, to also do it in the words of the people who went to these schools themselves. As part of this initiative, last year in May of 2022, we published the Federal Indian Boarding School Report. This is the first of a 2-volume report that lays out, again, for the first time in the history of this country, the federal government's accounting of these boarding schools. And so what we've compiled is a list. The first official list of all of these boarding schools, we've determined there were 405 federal Indian boarding schools operating across the United States between 1819 and 1963. These are schools that were funded directly by the federal government or operated directly by the federal government. That's the first time we've ever had an official list of federal Indian boarding schools. We also identified that there were at least 53 different burial sites across the federal Indian boarding school system. And we also, through that research, were able to document why the federal government operated these schools. It was a policy of forced assimilation, but the reason behind that policy of forced assimilation of Indian kids was to make it easier to take land from Indian people. Because if the federal government were to change our culture as indigenous people connected to our homelands and make us sever that connection, then they could justify saying Indian people don't need all those lands anymore. And so we can take them for settlement and colonization. And so in putting this report together, we also identified that these impacts of these boarding schools led directly to physical abuse, emotional abuse, mental abuse, the taking of indigenous languages. We often heard during our boarding school listening sessions people say, I didn't lose my language, it was taken. I didn't just walk out one day and forget it, set it down and forget it. This was taken systematically. And that was a direct consequence of these boarding schools. And we also found through this research that the mental health and physical health impacts of these boarding schools carry forward through generations. So I suspect none or very few of us in this room went to federal Indian boarding schools, but almost everyone in this room has grandparents or great-grandparents who went to some of these schools. And we've found out through research that mental health and physical health impacts, negative impacts, carry forward generations and manifest themselves today in our communities because people in our families went to these boarding schools. And so we're going to continue this work going forward. We are finalizing a second volume of this report where we are going to attempt to identify how much money the federal government spent on these boarding schools. We're going to try to put a number on how many Indian kids went to these boarding schools. We're also going to try to identify how many Indian kids went to these boarding schools and didn't come home, either because they died or they went missing, and also try to identify the location of the different burial sites so that we can begin to work to protect them. So this is a comprehensive initiative. It was undertaken directly by Secretary Holland under her leadership, under the President's leadership, and it wouldn't be happening. If you think about this, the 250-year history of the United States, we've never accounted for this as a country, and this would not be happening without the President, without the Secretary's leadership. Miigwech.
Hello, Medakiapi. My name is Tyler Starkumzo. I'm Oglala Hunkpapa Namini Koju Lakota, and I reside from the Pine Ridge Reservation. Our second question will be for Commissioner Kunesh. Can you share with us the significance of the Supreme Court's decision to uphold the Indian Child Welfare Act and how the Administration for Native Americans supports the implementation of ICWA?
Wopila Tanka. I just love having a fellow Lakota ask the questions, and I'd like to say Hehane Washte, Shante Washte Time Heyo, which means good day or hello, good morning. I think it's the afternoon. My relatives. And I just love that we can come together with a good heart. And I just thank you so much, Assistant Secretary Newland, for your work on this boarding school issue. I have 4 generations of boarding schools in my family, and yes, we do feel the impacts from generation to generation. And the Indian Child Welfare Act of 1978 is a direct, sort of consequence from the boarding school history. And in 1978, I think the data show that over 30% of Native children had been removed from their homes in one form or another. And oftentimes this removal was based on poverty and a misconstruction of homes that really had very basic, rudimentary living situations, which of course were designed by the federal government. So in many ways, as the Assistant Secretary indicated, the government was working against Native people. And then they had a program, the Indian Adoption Project, which really went out there to seek a supply of Native children for adoption. So we have lost our children. We have normalized child removal in the United States for decades and decades, generations. And finally, Senator Aberesk from South Dakota, our state, introduced a law that became the Indian Child Welfare Act. And the premise of that law is that Native children are essential to the lifeblood and longevity, to the sovereignty, to the self-determination of tribes. And there's no more precious asset than our children. And more so that the tribes should be in the primary position to make decisions about the placement of children. So it's a lot about tribal sovereignty as well. So all this year and last year, we were very nervous about a case before the U.S. Supreme Court called Brackeen versus Holland, the Secretary of the Department of the Interior. And we were nervous because it raised very fundamental issues, constitutional issues, about the federal relationship, the government-to-government relationship with tribes, that tribes have the sovereign right to exist as governments, and really questions the whole construct of how tribes are situated in this federal system of government. We also know that this is a very conservative court, and that there was a powerhouse of lawyers really supporting taking down the Indian Child Welfare Act. And I think some of the motivations for that challenge have been borne out, that more children to be adopted and to erase the rights of Native people and Native tribes. So I actually was on the Klamath Reservation at the time the decision came down. I was meeting with our Tribal Advisory Committee, and we had just talked about the devastating consequences that could arise from this decision. So the next morning we got the word, and we were elated. We were overjoyed, practically crumbling, with relief. And what I thought when I read the decision, I loved how Justice Gorsuch described tribal rights. I mean, it was a clear, unprecedented, historic win for tribes. Let's be clear about that. It was 7-2, and here's a quote from Justice Gorsuch. He described tribal rights in almost a poetic way. He concluded that in adopting the federal statute, the Indian Child Welfare Act, that Congress exercised lawful authority to secure the rights of Indian parents to raise their families as they please, the right of Indian children to grow in their culture, and the right of Indian communities to resist fading into the twilight of history. I just thought that was pretty amazing. But what's not poetic, of course, is that we still have an overabundant number of Native children being removed from their families and their communities. And what we're doing about this, what we have been doing about this in my shop, the Administration for Native Americans and the Administration for Children and Families, is really funding fundamental services that support Native children and families. We put out, for example, $1 billion every year to support Native children and families. And I wanted to share with you a few of the recent policy successes that we've had that specifically address Indian child welfare issues. So, for example, we recently issued a new ruling on kinship care. And as most of us know, our families raise each other through extended members. It could be a grandmother, an auntie, an uncle. It could be a cousin. In any regard, we have extended family, and we call this kin. So we've passed a rule, I should say, that allows children and child welfare agencies the option to use kin-specific foster care licensing. And this means that tribes and states now have the right, the authority to pursue kinship foster care placements. And this is incredibly important because we know that Indigenous as well as Black children do not receive, their caregivers do not receive support in this sort of extended family way. So we're supporting families and we're supporting kids staying with their families. The other thing I think is really important is that we have proposed a rule that would allow child welfare agencies to use federal funds to help cover the cost of providing access to attorneys in child welfare proceedings. And oftentimes parties aren't represented or the tribe is not able to participate because funds aren't available. And when you don't have a good, strong, informed advocate in the court with you, your rights are compromised. We also have proposed a change in the definition of parentage. And why this is important is because it allows the courts to recognize the definition of parentage by states and tribes. It's a big win for tribes and tribal sovereignty, but it also allows us to describe, defend, and really support the whole array of families, be they blended or same-sex or what have you. But it's always about supporting the needs of the children and the families. And then I just want to conclude by sharing a little something about ANA. We are a grant-making agency. I like to call ours the happy agency because all we do is give money out, right? But one of the things we can do is sort of influence how we talk about our policy priorities. And most recently at the National Native Language Summit, I announced our initiative around Native early childhood development. And for us and for me, I see it from a very strong social as well as economic perspective, that every dollar we invest into early childhood development gives a like $17 return on investment. And that's a long range return on investment. And we talk about 7 generations, right? We have a long-term investment in creating environments that are nurturing, that are supportive of families and kinship and the whole bit. But we also want to support that good brain development that also creates good neural pathways, that builds resilience. And this is actually healing for the trauma that many of our children and families still suffer. So early childhood development is very near and dear to us. I hope to be sharing more about that initiative in the near future. But I'm so glad to see all of you here. And obviously, you've had some good early childhood development experiences yourselves. So Wopi Latanka.
Thank you. So our next question will be for Director So. Can you share with us how the Indian Health Service is supporting the Federal Indian Boarding School Initiative?
Thank you for that question. Again, my name is Rosalind So. Thank you very much for being here with us today. So Indian Health Service has partnered with Department of Interior with regards to the Road to Healing. Actually, I just got in about 1 o'clock this morning from the last one that we were just in Bozeman, Montana yesterday for the last event, and what an honor it has been to be able to stand side by side with a sister agency to deal with and to be part of the health component for these very, very difficult conversations. It's been very interesting because if you did not sort of grow up in this kind of environment, if you didn't know about it, it's hard to understand, and it's even harder to hear the stories. Yesterday's stories were no different. You can sort of just appreciate the challenges that our people have gone through in regards to the experiences that they had. But I would say a couple things that I walked away with from listening to these stories was not that it was all bad. There were some stories where people said, this is where I made my best friend. This is where I went to get away from a bad situation at home. So we have to look at that whole spectrum of experiences that our people went through, our mothers and our fathers. I also just recently was reflecting on my personal life and thinking about my parents. My parents met at a boarding school, and they never talked about their experience. And I'm sitting here thinking, wow, does that mean it was a good experience? Or does that mean it was not a good experience? So it really, I think, goes back to our role in this whole process, but our role every day at the Indian Health Service is really trying to help our families deal with some of the experiences that they had, and most in this trauma-informed era that we're in. We hear about that word all the time now. But when you look at our whole history in terms of what we have experienced as we walk into now this month of Native American Heritage Month, and yet we're now talking about things that perhaps we've never talked about before. We're hearing about things that maybe we've never heard about before. So as we move forward and looking at the health component of this entire system that we're looking at for our people, our Native people, is that I'm looking out at this and I'm thinking I should stand outside and just start recruiting people. And I want to invite all of you to be looking at a health field for your professional experience. Right now, we have issues with mental health all across Indian country, all across the world, the need for mental health services. And at the Indian Health Service, we are at a 40% vacancy rate, which means that every family that needs mental health services is not going to get it with these statistics. Every child that needs services to be able to deal with the experiences that they're living right now today is not going to get it because we can't meet that need. So I'm looking across here, looking at all of your young faces and thinking, how do I get you to look at a healthcare field? Whether it's mental health, whether it's a physician, whether it's a nurse, whether it's a coder, everything that we do at Indian Health Service really is looking to build out. So again, in the years to come, that we're going to be able to deal with the needs of our people. And finally, we're coming off of a pandemic that hit Indian country, particularly when I was in the Navajo area. We were hit first, and we were hit fast. And we survived through that. It was at a huge price of some of the people that we had. But what I would say are some of the successes that came out of that was the education that we were able to build out, was the fact that I was able to stand side, the federal government official and a tribal official were able to stand side by side for the best and the betterment of the people's needs. And we were able to come together and speak with one voice. And so as we move forward, I'm really asking you to think about, it could be the boarding school, it could be the Indian Child Welfare Act. There are many, many things that our families, our history is bringing to us right now. Lastly, I would say this is also Veterans Month, and in a time where we really need to lift up all of our veterans, and we have, again, the highest per capita of veterans in Indian country that have served. So thank you.
One of the things that I've been personally thinking about a lot is what it means to be able to speak from your heart and how that influences advocacy. And one thing that I talked with some of you about at a fellowship opportunity a couple weeks ago in Minneapolis was like how I guess anger and love can work together in like healing. Like as a Native youth who spent 13 years in the child welfare system, that's something that I think about a lot. And so that kind of, I don't know, that kind of like it leads into this like last question, because I think it's important to think about how those things are not taught together, right? We all hold anger because of the things that have happened to us, because our family lines have been interrupted, because our family lines have all faced some sort of removal, whether that's boarding school or being adopted out, or moved even to urban areas, or, you know, so how does anger and love work together in order to form healing? How do you heal while you still feel so angry? Is a question that I've been asking myself a lot and have been asking others. So with that, for the Native youth who are up here, what do you think that we can do to support healing from intergenerational impacts of boarding school, as well as to help protect ICWA?
So my great-grandma, Vivian Teton, is actually a survivor of residential school. And, you know, she's still alive today. She survived the mental and physical abuse from that. And, you know, it's hard, but it made her stronger. And she has those stories to pass on to her grandkids and her great-grandkids. And I just think as youth who have voices, to spread the word about this, to educate those around you that may not know if what it is, because I know when I was in high school, I actually did part of my senior project about talking about residential schools, and I went to an all-white high school, and most of them didn't believe me that this was a problem back in the day and still is a problem. So, yeah, thank you.
I feel you can answer this question in many different ways. When I think about the healing work that we do, I think it's just how we treat our relatives. Like I've been talking about this a lot recently, is restoring this kinship. Kinship can look like a lot of things. Kinship is safety. Kinship is this indigenous love. kinship is an acknowledgement, a bond. And boarding schools, since we're talking about it, really affected that. And it made our grandparents scared. And that really affected the kinship with their children. And then it's just a line, it's a chain. And it's really hard to break. I feel kinship right now, to me, because I'm experiencing it personally, is vulnerability. It's so hard to be vulnerable with people because we're so taught to be strong all the time. A few years back, my grandma told me, like, I was crying to her one time, and I just told her I didn't understand why I felt the way I was, and she told me to never hold back your tears, that there is medicine in crying. Like, letting your tears fall is just as healing as laughter is. And we need to normalize that. And it's really difficult in these days, and you see it in a lot of youth. And then I guess kinship is just what my main focus right now. It's a deep connection that it's very broad, and it is hard to understand, but it's something that we feel. Yeah. Hope you love.
I guess I kind of talked about this at the beginning. I think healing is definitely a balancing act between the anger, the pent-up anger, literally hundreds of years of anger, and hope at the same time. And I think both of those things, and love as well, both of those things can be really, really hard to juggle. I also think that the way that I see it, I don't think my kids will be healed, right? Because I'm not healed, and I don't think I'll be healed, right? I was removed when I was 5 years old, and was not connected fully to my culture or my community. I was grateful to have had a Native American outreach worker, but she unfortunately committed suicide when I was 11 years old. And she instilled in me who I was, and she kept me with my biological family, though they weren't my native family, as my biological family. And if that didn't happen, I would be lost. And I was for a long time. And I think sometimes I still am, especially when I'm in that like teeter-tottering of being angry and like feeling love, right? And so I kind of agree with you, like, about the kinship. It's about being able to talk to one another and actually form community with one another. There is a strategy in the systems that have made us feel powerless, right? All of these things, forced removal in any capacity, was a strategy to make us powerless, to feel powerless. And that feeling of powerless and hopelessness has existed in our family lines for hundreds of years, right? Even in my family, even to myself. And I felt that all through growing up in the child welfare system. So I think my way of healing from this is to take my power back. It's to be able to share my story with other people. It's being able to share space with other people who have similar experiences. It's being able to talk about these things openly, and even talking about them to people who don't care or don't even want to listen. I'm still going to tell them, right? Because, yeah, exactly. They need to hear it too. I think they probably need to hear it the most. And I think there's a lot of power in vulnerability. I've always been big on that. So yeah, I guess that's my answer. I think it's taking back my power and not feeling so powerless, and realizing that I actually do have that strength within me. If my family line has faced hundreds of years of removal in various different ways, then I can take that power back, because they were able to live through that. So yeah, that's my answer to that.
Thank you, Rox. Thank you, Roxy. So next, we'd like to open the floor to our youth audience to ask questions of the panel. We know many of you have thoughts regarding how youth can play a part in addressing the impact of boarding school and protecting ICWA. Okay, we can go right there in the green, or the black, sorry.
No worries, mahalo nui. Mine is actually more directed comment to Commissioner Kanish. You talked about re-envisioning education, really, right? And, you know, in Hawaii, we had the Hawaiian language nest, or the Punana Leo, as well as the now established Kaupuni Hawaiian immersion schools, inspired by the efforts made by our brothers and sisters, the Maori of Aotearoa of New Zealand. So really, and one thing I just wanted to comment on, some of that has come with our own challenges, right? Like the state is constantly pressuring what that looks like, having us adjust the charter school movement to look like the industrialization schools that are now flooding what we now call public school. So just wanted to kind of comment on that to make sure that when you guys are doing those initiatives, do find the autonomy and the protections, because boy, do they make change and healing hard, right? It ain't ever an easy process. So mahalo, just wanted to share that real brief.
Wopila for that comment, and I want to commend you and all Native Hawaiians for the incredible work that you're doing to preserve and advance the vitality of your language. And in Hawaii, a child, an infant, can go from infancy all the way up to PhD level learning in Native Hawaiian language. And at ANA, we serve Native Hawaiians as well as Pacific Islanders. And it is a stressful situation, environment, where state institutions are not supportive. In fact, they're detracting from the ability to really preserve and to support language learners, much less advanced language learners. And your work is so incredibly important because language is tied to culture, and culture is tied to identity, and identity is tied to healing. So continue your good work, please.
Okay, we can go to you in the green.
Hi, my name's Yananui. I'm Dear Clan from the Seneca Nation. I wanted to kind of share and ask, at Cornell, there's a professor teaching an introductory American Indian Studies class, and he's teaching kind of like the good parts of Indian boarding schools. And like a lot of the students, you know, most of them are not Native, are going away believing that what happened was a good and virtuous thing. And although like students have critiqued that, and the professor has said, you know, we're gonna get there eventually. We're gonna get to the bad stuff eventually. That's not being shared. And so I think the problem there is that the research that currently exists does enforce the idea that this was a good thing that we were doing for the Indians. And I just wanted to ask, like, although these reports kind of correct that history and provide that truth, how do we institute that into our education systems and in our curriculum? Because I don't believe that people are searching for that. The people who need to hear it are going to hear it.
Sure. Thank you for that. I'm well acquainted with that mentality. You know, growing up in a tribal community, boarding schools are something that you know about, you hear about, but you step outside your community, and it's amazing. Even people who live just a few miles away, they don't know anything about it, right? But that's also an opportunity because people who don't know a thing about something have the ability to learn it and learn it the correct way. So part of the benefit of doing the work that we're doing under Secretary Holland's leadership is telling on ourselves, because I'm a federal official. I'm sitting up here as a federal official. I'm a member of the United States federal government, telling the truth about what we did, we, the United States federal government, did. And so it's hard to dispute that then if you have the federal government saying, this is what we did. This is what happened. And here's a firsthand account from all these Native people we went around the country and heard from. Here's a firsthand account from them. It's hard to dispute that. And nobody in this work is saying that it's a good thing. We're telling the truth about it. The purpose of it was to de-Indian people and take their land, right? And so, if there's somebody out there making a moral judgment saying that was a good thing, then they can explain that for themselves. But I don't think anybody who is centered properly would think that abusing the Indian out of kids, targeting kids, breaking up their families, and taking all of their land and their wealth as part of that, I don't think anybody would say that that is a good thing to do to somebody. And so the way that you institute this is you simply teach. You teach people. You teach people formally, but also informally. And that's the hand-to-hand fighting that has to occur in education, is just getting people to understand the truth. But truth and accountability always starts with ourselves, and we, the federal government, are telling the truth about what happened.
Okay, we can go to you in the back, right there, yeah.
Did I hold it? My name is Joshua Atagavik Cannon. I'm from Nome, Alaska. I'm St. Lawrence Island, Siberian Yupik. My question is, after the initial investigation is complete, does the department plan to open any more funding opportunities similar to the opportunities that were given out last May during phase 1 of the boarding school initiative? And if so, can you provide any details surrounding those opportunities? And I ask this because I feel like almost all of us in this room continue to feel the impacts from the boarding school era, and a lot of those impacts are felt in our communities where we lack funding in areas from the symptoms of the boarding school area: language revitalization, housing, social services, mental health facilities. The list goes on. And so I just wanted to ask if there's any further opportunities after the investigation is complete to allow our community members to heal in our way and allow us to be in control of what we do moving forward from the money.
Sure. Thanks, Josh. That's a great question. So this work that we're doing, the investigation and the report, a lot of times in government we have this tendency to think in terms of to-do lists and projects. Like, okay, I'm just going to do this investigation. Now that's done. I'm moving on to the next thing. This isn't a project. The boarding school policies and practices led into the child removal through foster care. This was 200 years. So it's not going to be done in a 2-year project. This is the beginning. One of the things, though, that we are working to invest in is native language revitalization. We're also partnering with agencies and tribes on mental health treatment, substance abuse. But the policy of forced assimilation was directly tied to land, and it touches on everything. That the family reunification, violence in tribal communities, land ownership, mental health, mental well-being, physical and medical health. And so to your question about what's going to come out of this, we are working to set a foundation to address all of that. And a lot of that work has already begun. And when you think about funding, there's a lot of unmet needs in Indian country, a lot of things that have been ignored. But this administration, on top of the annual budgets, has invested $43 billion into Indian country through the American Rescue Plan, through the Inflation Reduction Act and the Bipartisan Infrastructure Law. And just for scale, that is 15 years worth of the BI's budget that's been invested into Indian country in just 2 years. And it's going toward a lot of the things that you're talking about. And I think it's important to hear from Director So and Commissioner Kunish to talk about their work that they're doing to address some of the things you've raised.
Thank you for that question as well. I would say this administration, including Secretary Becerra, that you were able to listen to and hear from earlier, has just been a tremendous advocate for Indian health care. This is not just Indian Health Service, but all of our tribes and our urban programs that also provide health care services for us. This is the first time in this administration where we have the enormous amount of support across the federal government. The number of Native Americans that are in these very key positions, we're able to affect change now, and then hopefully those changes will continue to grow throughout the years. But also to the resources that we have. Again, collaborating at HHS has been one of my key priorities. Collaborating with SAMHSA, for example, where they have the resources for mental health services, and making sure that they travel with me to Indian country, that they know I have traveled with the Assistant Secretary from SAMHSA out to Alaska and out to Washington State. So this is what I'm doing with my colleagues. So they get to see Indian country. They get to see the challenges that we experience on a regular basis. So my role here is really looking at how do we leave a footprint, that when I move on from this position, what do we do? What do we leave today? And I think that goes to the question earlier about telling our story. If we're not going to embrace, if we're not going to lean into these opportunities that we have, as hard as they are, as difficult as they are, with everything I do, it's an educational moment every single day about making sure that my colleagues understand the challenges and the opportunities that there are in Indian country. And so everything that I do, I've spent a majority of my time, probably 60% of my time, has been traveling out to Indian country. So I also understand, I'm not saying that one tribe is the same as another tribe. I've seen many, many differences, but I've also seen some wonderful experiences and opportunities. And I get to bring that back and talk with my colleagues at HHS and say, look, these tribes can do this on their own. These tribes have been able to move things that we can't do at the government sometimes. And how do we replicate that? How do we make sure that we're sharing that story as we move forward? So thank you.
Yeah. I'll just add a few thoughts, because the best policy and the only policy that has ever worked in the long term is self-governance, self-determination. And we've heard from Assistant Secretary Newland and Director So that their programs are really supporting the work in the community that is being done by the community members, determined by their tribal leaders. And we at ANA and ACF really have embraced self-governance as well. We have supported this whole project called 477, where we're really allowing these federal funds to be used by and determined by and prioritized tribes themselves. So I do think the work, the healing, the future is going to be in these communities, and self-governance and self-determination is going to pull us out. I believe that there is tremendous hope. And the investments that we've made today through this administration thus far, it's going to have many, many ripple effects. But to understand behavioral health and mental health and child well-being, we need a lot of great minds. And just like Director So is saying, we need all of you as the future leaders of Indian country to really think hard about what solutions are needed for all of us.
We'll go to you in the middle.
Osio, Dakwadohia, Tyler Moore. Hello, my name is Tyler Moore. I'm a member of the Cherokee Nation of Oklahoma and a student representative of Haskell Indian Nations University. Haskell University has a unique history. Our university began, sadly, as a boarding school in 1884. Thankfully, Haskell's policies have changed in the last 100 years, but we are still in a constant struggle. Haskell needs a stronger and more adequate federal support and funding. We need proactive support, not reactive. Haskell has a horrifyingly dark history but the capability to make the brightest future. How does this administration see itself helping Haskell and other indigenous places of education going forward?
I agree with everything you just said. Some of the smartest people I've ever met have come out of Haskell. You go across Indian country and people doing the work on the ground, leading innovative change, come from places like Haskell and Sippy. Some of the best artists in the United States, not best Indian artists, the best artists are coming out of places like IAIA. These are places we need to invest more in and do it proactively. I have nothing to add beyond what you already said other than to just say, yes, I agree.
Hello.
Okay. We're out of time. So unfortunately, we won't be able to answer any more questions, but I just wanted to say chimigwech to everyone who is here and for the people up here who are sharing their stories and also sharing their experiences and findings as well, and for doing all the good work, the hard work that needs to get done for ourselves and our families and our communities. So miigwech.
First, we want to thank the panel for a great discussion. We know with these discussions, it can be very challenging for our people as it relates to the impacts of boarding schools. So at this time, we'd like to call up Unity's Vice President and Rocky Mountain Representative, Watson Whitford, to do a prayer song for us as we transition. Thank you.
Hello again. So, because we're in this building, we're not able to burn sweetgrass or sage or anything. So I just have it up here with me just so that we could use it in that way. But, this topic that we just spoke about, it's a difficult topic for our people. It has affected us for a long time, and so it's okay. It's okay to feel the feelings that you feel right now. It's okay to feel sad. It's okay to be mad. These emotions, they run through us because we care so strongly about our people. And so it's okay to feel these emotions. As long as we continue and pick ourselves back up, just like our ancestors did for us to be here. And so I'll share this song. It's a traveling song. It's from the Cree tribe. And I forgot to mention earlier, I come from the Chippewa Cree tribe in Rocky Boy, Montana, and the Navajo Nation. And I'm currently attending Montana State University in Bozeman, Montana. And so the Road to Healing journey that they just spoke about was their last location was at my college that I attend. And so, I had friends that were able to attend there and to sing an honor song over there for that event. And so, I'm really thankful for that, or for these things that are happening for our people, for this healing. And so this song, it's a travel song. And our people have traveled this far to come here to speak about these things. And we're on a healing journey. And so this journey song will continue our healing. We'll be able to continue healing and being able to help one another in that way. And so I ask for no recording or anything. I know we're live, but, no recording if you can help me with that. So, in your own way too, if you could pray for your families, pray for your ancestors, pray for yourself. Think of yourself in that way too, so that you could be strong.
Yeah.
Thank you all. And, let's continue to heal, continue to enjoy this time here, to continue doing your work. Very proud of all of you, and we could get through this together. Thank you.
Thank you, Vice President Whitford. It is my pleasure to introduce our next session, which will be a cultural exchange among all of us. We are excited to be joined today by a cohort of 6 international Indigenous youth, and we're going to start this session by hearing from each of them. First, I would like to introduce Senior Advisor for Global Strategy and International Indigenous Issues, Michael Orona. Michael Orona has worked for the U.S. Department of State for over 20 years, where he has held an array of senior-level foreign policy advisory positions in Washington, D.C., and various countries around the world. In 2020, Mr. Orona was selected to serve as Senior Advisor for Strategic Global Policy in the State Department's Bureau of Democracy, Human Rights, and Labor, where he oversaw implementation of the President's executive orders on advancing racial equity and promoting gender equity. In 2022, he was selected to concurrently serve as the State Department's Senior Advisor for Global Indigenous Issues. In this current capacity, he serves as advisor to the Department's Special Representative for Racial Equity and Justice. Mr. Orona co-leads the White House Subcommittee on International Indigenous Human Rights and oversees U.S. foreign policy regarding Indigenous peoples around the world. In previous years of government service, Michael served at the White House as National Security Council Director for African Affairs, where he oversaw the formulation of the U.S. Africa Strategy. While serving at the U.S. Embassy in Vietnam, Michael negotiated the release of 3 prisoners of conscience. In 2004, Mr. Orona established and led the State Department's Sudan Atrocities Documentation Team, which was dispatched by former Secretary of State Colin Powell to investigate violence in Darfur. Aside from a Juris Doctorate degree in international law, Michael received a Master of Science in Military and Strategic Policy Studies from the U.S. Marine Corps University Command and Staff College in Quanto, Virginia, where he was awarded the Foreign Area Officer Association Award for Exceptional Research in International Affairs. He is the recipient of 5 U.S. Department of State Superior Honor Awards and 3 Meritorious Honor Awards. He's a member of the Chiheni Band of Apache and of Yaqui ancestry. He currently lives in the D.C. area with his wife and 3 college-aged children. I will now turn it over to Senior Advisor Orona. Thank you.
Thank you. Good afternoon. Good afternoon. Danejo, Michael Orona, Shizhe. Michael Orona, and I work at the U.S. Department of State as Senior Advisor for International Indigenous Issues. And it is an honor to be with you this afternoon. And I have to say, it is truly an honor to be on stage with 6 incredible Indigenous youth advocates from around the world. So let's just give them a hand. Now, I want to invite each of them to take time, 2 to 3 minutes, and introduce themselves and the important work that they do in their respective countries. So first, in alphabetical order, from Brazil, I'd like to welcome Mariselma Francelino Fajo.
Thank you. Hello, everyone. On behalf of my Bananal village, my Terena people, and the indigenous people of Pantanal, Brazil, I thank you immensely for this opportunity. My name is Mariselma Fialho. I am indigenous to the Terena people of the Taunai-Pegi indigenous land, located in the state of Mato Grosso do Sul, Brazil. I am a biomedic, master student in infectious and parasitic diseases at the Faculty of Medicine of the Federal University of Mato Grosso do Sul, and member of the Terena Institute of Intercultural Education. Today, I will address the demarcation of indigenous land, which is vital to recognizing and respecting the rights of the native people. This plays a crucial role in the fight against climate change, preserving Brazil's cultural and environmental diversity. The indigenous people are the original inhabitants with a rich history and a strong connection with nature. We highlight the importance of conserving the Pantanal with its unique biodiversity and the crucial contribution of indigenous people in protecting this land, using their ancestral wisdom. The demarcation of indigenous land is an essential element to preserve these ecosystems and our people livelihood and our future. For example, the lack of access to clean water and basic sanitation violates our fundamental right and quality of the life. Preserving our interconnected ecosystems and secured basic services is an integral part of equality and justice for our community. In summer, promoting respect for indigenous territorial rights, continuous dialogue and access to sanitation are permitted action for justice, equality, and environmental responsibility. These elements together represent a commitment to the future of our country and our planet. Thank you.
Mariselma, thank you for everything you do. Thank you. And welcome to Washington.
Thank you.
Next, from Canada, Daisy Lahash. Maybe that one. Nope.
Hello? Okay, there, it's working now. Okay. Sego Zawaguego, there was Anta Daisy Lahash Yojats, there was a Oscar, not the Wagosariago, Gahnawage Dinue, Wakadahiardo, Dono Dinue Gideru. Hello, everybody. My name is Daisy Dewazanta Lahash. I am 21 years old. I am from Ganawage Mohawk territory, and thank you so much for having me be here to represent Canada at the 3rd annual White House Tribal Youth Forum. It's such an honor to be here, and I've heard so many topics brought up today that resonated so much with me, and I'm so happy that these dialogues and conversations are starting and they're happening in a space where it matters and change is being made. I learned a lot in just the day that it's the first day of the forum. We have a few more days here, and I'm so grateful for the people that I've met so far, the conversations that I've had, and yeah, I'm just so open to learning and hearing from hearing about everybody's experience and what you are doing for your communities. I want to keep it short, but I feel like I have so much to say. You didn't give us enough time.
We'll have time in a minute.
Yeah, so I just wanted to touch a little bit on how like my advocacy started and my contribution to my country. It kind of started when I learned to find my voice for myself and to advocate for myself as a child in the welfare system. So I had to, I don't even remember the age I was. I was pretty young. I was like early middle school, high school. And yeah, I had both my parents, they were incarcerated at one point. So I have like, you know, basically the whole list of all of the basic issues and traumas that we all carry as Ungwehue people. And my advocacy started when I had to like speak up about these things, and I demanded more from my life, I demanded more from my future, and I demanded more from the adults around me. So that was kind of where I was inspired to step into that leadership role and to begin my work as a youth leader. And yeah, I'm so grateful to be here today, to be able to speak with all of you, and I look forward to going back down and talking with you all. So Nyawakoa, thank you so much.
Thank you, Daisy. Thank you. Welcome. Welcome. Now please welcome from Colombia, Nawambi Lucas Castillo.
Hello everyone. I need to be like absolutely like organized or I'm gonna lose in my own ideas. First of all, I want to thank to the Cosmos to let me be here, to the elders to let me be here, to our Manesca and Mexion, who were the first Senu indigenous people, and for them that I'm here. And also I want to thank the memories, the ancestors, the spirits of this land that received me, that always are next to us everywhere we are. That's why my head, because the elders say that when you have a head, you have a universe in your head. My name is Noambi Lucas Castillo. I'm a lawyer, and I'm from the Resguardo Indígena Senu de San Andrés de Sotavento, Córdoba, Azúcar, y soy del Cabildo Urbano de Tuchín, Córdoba, en Colombia. I graduated for the top one university in Colombia, who was a really, really hard path to get to study there. And I want to share a little bit about the complex of Colombia, because I'm not here just like me or what I do for my community, but what I do for the whole indigenous movement in my country. Colombia is a complex country. We have a still existent armed conflict in our country. We have many different armed actors, such as the guerrillas, the paramilitares, and even the state, the army state, were part of the ones who harm us in different ways. We in Colombia are 115 indigenous communities, and we survive because for this armed conflict, many of us have died. Many of us sacrificed their lives in order to protect our rights and to protect the rights of the nature, as we consider to live in harmony. I think we share a lot of common problems, like access to many stuff, access to water, access to education, to opportunities, to basic needs, to dream big. And I want to show you that I'm come from both my mom and my father were their lives were tread by the armed conflict, and I'm here thanks to all their work and all the work to the ones who sacrificed. I kind of did and do a lot of stuff at the same time. I currently working on the Special Jurisdiction of Peace, who is a like an international transitional and criminal law court to that analyze the armed conflict and give justice to the victims. Have worked to as a legal advocacy to my community and to the leaders and the ancestral leaders in different subjects like gender-based violence, protection to the nature, not just as a common being, but also as a victim of the conflict, and the harmonization between the state law and our own law in the different indigenous communities. And I just want to finish to say that always go back to the origin, always go back to your elders, stay indigenous, stay modern, and stay ancestral as we are. Thank you for having me.
Thank you, Humphrey. Great advice. Thank you. Thank you. Before I introduce our next participant, I just want to share, if you need English-Spanish translation, there are headsets on the table. And if you'd like to, you could turn now to channel 1. Channel 1. I'll give you just a minute. Now, from Guatemala, please welcome Edna Marley Figueroa Cook.
Muy buenas tardes, es para mí un gran gusto poder estar aquí con ustedes. Antes de presentarme, quiero compartirles que hoy nuestro calendario maya nos marca el Junlahu E, el día 11E. E significa el camino, así que hay una razón por la cual nosotras y nosotros estamos el día de hoy reunidos. Para la cosmovisión maya, para los pueblos mayas, el camino es sumamente importante. Cada uno de nosotros y nosotras tiene un camino y una meta de vida, que si permanece en él puede aportar a su comunidad, y nuestra forma de vida es de manera colectiva. No vivimos desde un pensamiento individualista, sino en buscar el bien común de todos y todas. Mi nombre es Edna Marley Figueroa Cook, soy maya Erchi, una de las 22 comunidades lingüísticas mayas que coexisten en Guatemala. La comunidad Erchi es uno de los idiomas más hablados en Guatemala, se habla incluso en el sur de México y en Belice, y es el segundo idioma maya más hablado en nuestro territorio. El trabajo que he realizado ha sido a base del activismo. Fui representativa indígena, por eso me da mucho orgullo ver también a representativas indígenas aquí. Fui Rabin Cobán, que significa hija de Cobán, Ucotzihal Mayaptinimit, flor nacional del pueblo maya, y actualmente soy reina indígena de Abya Yala. Abya Yala es el territorio que se le denomina como América, que traducido al castellano es tierra madura, tierra viva o tierra en florecimiento. Este es un certamen que se realiza en Panamá y pues tuve la oportunidad de representar a Guatemala. El trabajo que realizo también dentro de mi comunidad es fortaleciendo el idioma maya Erchi. Yo soy traductora e intérprete maya. Muchas de las mujeres de mi comunidad son monolingües, lo cual ha limitado su acceso a la información, y esto hace que ellas pues primero no conozcan sus derechos. Las mujeres lamentablemente es complicado que salgan de su comunidad, incluso que puedan acceder al sistema educativo. Nuestro sistema educativo es en teoría bilingüe, sin embargo hay una imposición del idioma castellano y el poder erradicar a los pueblos originarios. Entonces la labor que realizo como traductora e intérprete va principalmente en eso, enfocado a poder concientizar a las mujeres en cuanto a sus derechos, que ellas puedan tener este acceso a la información desde sus idiomas maternos. También trabajo en una organización que brinda acceso a energía solar en comunidades rurales. Yo vivo en uno de los departamentos donde hay casualmente muchas hidroeléctricas, pero el índice de electrificación es muy bajo, lo cual también limita el acceso a muchos otros servicios, y el poder brindarles a ellas el acceso a la tecnología, el acceso a la energía eléctrica, les brinda una ventana de oportunidades. Vivimos en un mundo globalizado donde aprender a utilizar un celular, una computadora, acceder a internet, nos puede cambiar la realidad a la cual enfrentamos, y que estas mujeres puedan acceder a estas herramientas desde su idioma materno ha permitido que ellas puedan buscar mejores oportunidades a raíz de la educación. También dentro de organizaciones juveniles he apoyado en cuanto a temas de concientización, poder propiciar la participación e incidencia política de jóvenes indígenas. Desde nuestra experiencia ha sido un trabajo colectivo. Dentro de nuestro libro sagrado Popkuj, que podríamos mencionar nuestra Biblia, tenemos una frase muy, muy importante que dice que todos se levanten, que nadie se quede atrás, que no sean uno ni dos de nosotros, sino todos. Entonces, dentro de nuestra forma de vida y nuestra cosmovisión y la relación que tenemos con la naturaleza, el poder salir adelante es algo colectivo. Y sé que ese es un sentimiento que muchos pueblos originarios tratamos de conservar hoy en día, y sin duda las respuestas a muchos problemas actuales, no solo el cambio climático, los problemas de género, las dinámicas de poder, están en nuestras raíces, y debemos de regresar a esas raíces para poder cambiar nuestra realidad. Muchísimas gracias.
Yeah. Muchísimas gracias. Bienvenidos. Please welcome from Honduras, Silvia Alejandra Miranda Loreto.
Oh my God. Hello, everybody. My name is Silvia Miranda. I am a lawyer, almost. I haven't graduated. And I just have to say, you ladies, all of you, you guys are amazing. The few people that I've met, you guys are incredible. I have so much to learn from you. And I just look forward to this next 4 days that I can get to know and learn from your communities, from your tribes, because I just have everything to learn from you guys. Briti Binafi, Silvia Miranda Niribe, Nuguyabu, Niduhenyu, Garina Guagia. Hello, everybody. My name is Silvia Miranda. My family and I, we are Garifunas. I know that my time is very limited, so I want to read a short story that I wrote, and it'll help you understand where I come from. I want to tell you a short story about a little girl in Honduras. This little girl is from the Garifuna ethnic group, and when she grew up to be a teen, in order to finish high school, she had to study outside under the street lighting poles because there was no electricity in her house. Her mom didn't have enough money, so in the end, it was cut off for over 3 years. She ended up finishing high school, became a teacher, and years down the line, I'm talking a decade later, she had a little Garifuna girl, and she had a vision. She knew she had to continue studying, and there was one thing that she believed in, was in education. And so she wanted her daughter as well to have access to a better education. And with a lot of hard work, poverty, and against everything, she became a lawyer. She pushed through, and above all, and always, she taught her little Garifuna girl 2 things: to dream big and to speak up. And today, that little Garifuna girl is sitting right here with you all. Being an eyewitness and coming directly from poverty, a third world country, I had everything in my hands to not believe in change and in improvement, especially with all the lack of good education that we experience in Latin America. So I decided last year to start a nonprofit organization called the Women with Power Foundation. And our focus is to help young Garifuna, Afro-descendant, and indigenous girls and young women to continue their education, no matter their skin color, their socioeconomic background, and above all, their ethnic group. My culture knows no borders because we are all Garifunas and we are all one. Thank you. Seremeng.
Thank you, thank you, thank you. I'll invite you again to turn to Channel 1. From Mexico, please welcome Josefina Bautista Peña.
Sinasque nanochime notokai Josefina Bautista Peña ni Juanihuitza de Nealtepet, Puebla. Buenas tardes a todos. Me acabo de presentar en mi lengua materna, que es el náhuatl. Provengo de ese pueblo y lo que dije fue que mi nombre es Josefina y mi estado se llama Puebla y vivo como en la sierra. Vivo en la sierra, justo en una montaña casi. Pero es para mí un gran honor estar con todos ustedes, jóvenes que han trabajado en sus propias comunidades y que están haciendo cosas. Eso a mí me motiva mucho, pero a la vez también me hizo ver como los problemas que ustedes también tienen, porque hace rato que ustedes pasaban, mencionaban muchas cosas, muchas problemáticas que en mi mundo encerrado allá en Puebla pensé que solo teníamos esos problemas, que los pueblos que están ahí y los que están todos en México solo enfrentábamos esos problemas. Sin embargo, ahora estando aquí me doy cuenta que esos problemas son internacionales, que incluso aquí ustedes mismos los han expresado y que nuestros pueblos son los más vulnerables en esto. Al escucharlos me sentí muy preocupada porque era como la sensación de que entonces algo nos une, por algo estamos aquí como jóvenes y eso también juega un papel muy importante en nuestro rol como jóvenes, porque también estamos como en estos dos mundos, lo moderno y lo indígena. Entonces tenemos que plantearnos esta cuestión de cómo seguir siendo jóvenes indígenas en este mundo globalizado. Y es así como en el proyecto que yo vengo, que es una preparatoria indígena, tratamos de rescatar desde los jóvenes que se hable la lengua, que se preserven como los conocimientos indígenas. Incluso vemos que hay una alternativa ahí, porque hace rato mencionaban mucho del escucharnos para concientizarnos, pero también hay que ver que la concientización tiene que venir de ambas partes, tiene que ser tanto como nuestros pueblos, porque nuestros pueblos ya saben, pero también tiene que venir como de estos espacios de gobierno, de Estado, que también tienen que escucharnos, una escucha mutua. Y entonces es ahí como vamos a ir entendiendo, comprendiendo todas estas formas de dar solución desde la educación, desde los derechos y también sobre la salud. Hace rato mencionaban como muchos aspectos importantes. A mí este foro me parece muy, muy interesante, muy importante. Me preocupa, pero también me alienta a seguir haciendo cosas desde donde vengo. Yo estudié antropología social. Para mí acceder a una licenciatura en la ciudad fue muy complicado porque afectaba mucho lo económico también. Sin embargo, el haber concluido la carrera y conocer los 68 pueblos indígenas que existen en México y después venir hasta acá otra vez y conocerlos a todos ustedes es para mí muy grato y muy satisfactorio. Muchas gracias a todos y espero verlos y platicar un poco también. Sé que el idioma es la barrera, algo que nos limita, sin embargo nos estamos viendo y los estoy viendo también y es muy increíble el saber que están aquí, el saber que siguen aquí de pie representando a sus pueblos y muchas gracias.
Gracias a usted, gracias. Bienvenidos. Did I not say there were 6 wonderful advocates up here? Let's give them one more round of applause, please. I want to thank all of you for making the long journey here to Washington, D.C., and we really appreciate you being here. We're not done, though. We're just getting started because as everyone here, including Sylvia and Josefina said, we can learn from each other. We can learn so much from each other, and that's why we're here. So we're going to start a tabletop cultural exchange here in this very ballroom here, and I'm going to turn it over to our youth facilitators to guide us through that process. Bronson, Jenna.
Which one's it? Latter parts. Okay, should I say this part? Sure. So looks like we're off to now our youth power section, right? So I'm going to turn it over to Jenna to give a little brief too on that one real quick.
Hamidakiapi, chante washte nape chiuzapie, miniwaka oyate hemataha, dakota wikonshke hemakcha, wichankpi tokahia wia makiapie. My name is Jenna Makesgood. I come from the Spirit Lake Nation in North Dakota and the Osage Nation in Oklahoma. And we are now getting ready to move into a group cultural exchange. In your folders, you will see questions to guide your discussion. Each table will need a leader to guide the discussion and to write down key thoughts. And those that want to share out to the whole group will be able to at the end of our session. There will be staff available to assist you if you have any questions, and Bronson and I will also be available if you guys need any help. So let's get started.
So we'll have the next 20 minutes to discuss and answer the questions that are on this piece of paper. That one says, Building Youth Power Across Cultures. And then we'll come back together to hear from as many tables as we can in our remaining time. So also choose your person who's going to talk to. Yeah, mahalo. Call everybody, ask for volunteers, right? Yeah. For 2. Okay, everybody, attention real quick. Thank you so much. I hope you guys have been having that time to really build that pilina and that connection with each and every one of you and learn about each other's cultures and where each of you are from. We're going to, due to some time constraints too, we'll get 2 of you to share to the larger group, but we hope everyone's appreciated the time to share with each other. So we're going to ask real quick, any big volunteers burning to share something? Okay, one at the end of the table over there.
All right, Halito. So a lot of what we talked about and what I noticed we all had in common is the unity and connection aspect. So I had brought up our tribal flag and the significance of the arrows and the unity. We talked about meditation and the connection with ourselves. We also talked about the earth, and as the clouds change, it's our mind changing. And then also with dances, we talked a lot about dances and how it's a coming of age, how it's maturing, how it's realizing yourself, and how it's connecting with your past, with your future, and with your current self. And we also talked about how some of the dances and ceremonies have been stolen from us in our past. So one of the people at our table, Summer, she had said that the male ceremonies were taken during the boarding schools, and there is no male ceremonies in her tribe, in her tradition, and that she believed that what I thought was very important was that we could heal the gap between genders, and we could help create unity in how we treat each other if we can heal with more ceremonies for everyone and relearning and retaking those back.
Mahalo for sharing.
Is there any other table that would like to share one person from one table? Okay, don't all go at once. Okay, this table right here.
Hello. Okay. So we talked about a few of the points on this page. We talked about the difference in the traditional moccasins throughout our different communities and territories, and how they all look different and they're constructed differently, and also highlighted the similarities, and how our dogs will all eat them no matter how they're sewn. We talked about our traditional governing practices for each of our tribes, very brief. So I was curious to hear about how the Alaskan Native tribes construct their government. So I was asking, and I learned a lot just from that little conversation. And it's so different from how my nation's governance system is constructed and how they operate. So that was really, enlightening and informative. That was very cool. We also talked about the particular treaty that holds great significance to our tribe. One that I brought up was the J Treaty, and it was pretty funny, a little experience I experienced this morning during check-in. I was called a foreigner, and I thought it was pretty funny. Not funny, but I was a little bit insulted, but I'm like, it's not their fault. So I'm actually, I fall under the J Treaty. So I am not Canadian nor U.S. citizen. I am Ungwehuen. I am from Turtle Island, and welcome to Turtle Island. So yeah, I got called a foreigner today, and I just wanted to talk about that little experience. Yeah, and we were also talking about like our beadwork and different parts of our regalias and stuff. Oh, okay. And there was one word, a cultural teaching. So we all went around and we shared like a word from our language. Yeah, I heard some cool words today, but the word that I chose to share was called Gonalunkwa, and it's Mohawk language, Gonyagahan language. I'll repeat it one more time. It's Gonalunkwa, and it means I love you, or the more literal translation means you are as precious to me as the rain. And I think that was very nice, and I just wanted to share that. Thank you.
So mahalo to everyone who shared, and mahalo to each of you for sharing on your respective tables. Next up, we're going to call up Mr. Arona, I believe, has some things to share as we close this session. Mahalo.
Very quickly, I just want to thank everyone for participating in this groundbreaking initiative. It's the first time we've had our International Indigenous cohort to come, so I want to thank them. I want to thank all of you for welcoming this fabulous six of individuals. They'll be here throughout the week with a number of very important meetings, so thank you all. And before I close, I also want to share a deep thank you to Rose, Raina, Howie, Morgan, Deep, Carrie, and so many people behind the scenes that really made this happen. So thank you all. Thanks.
Good. Are we good? All right. Before we get started, I just want to say, excuse myself for speaking in front of the ones older than me, and I'm honored to be sitting here, sharing this panel with these wonderful people. I say Dosha Nakhbaga O, me Shooter Stewart Heads, me Oahe Heads. I come from the Fort Berthold Indian Reservation in North Dakota, the 3 affiliated tribes, the Mandan, Hidatsa, Rikara people. I'm a senior at North Dakota State University, and I'm just really honored to be sitting here in front of all of you. And we're going to go ahead and kick it off to Sam McCracken to introduce himself.
Thank you, Shooter. Thank you. Pidoha, Palgunta he, Hudashana. I come from the Assiniboine Sioux community on the Fort Peck Indian Reservation in northeastern Montana. And I'll turn it over to my good friend here, Silent Rain.
Hello, how are you? My name is Silent Rain. I am Kumeyaay and Penobscot from a tribe in San Diego and a tribe in Maine. I'm currently a professional softball player for USSA Pride out of Orlando, Florida.
Tansanawah kumagantik at tamskatinawaw tapoy miwasin niwapim tawaw wamaingan nasigasun hagakaptigo hostenya moichesqua nehewan maga ketea exkenamoche kenehewan kapixquewin nista agomemo. Good day, everyone. My name is Michael Linklater. I'm from Thunderchild First Nation, which is in Saskatchewan, across the Medicine Line in Canada. I'm part of Treaty 6 territory. My given name is White Wolf. And my colonial name is Michael Linklater. And I'm a retired professional basketball player. I represented Team Canada at the World Cup for 3x3 basketball, played professionally for several years on the World Tour. I won a national championship in university as well as a professional national championship in the Canadian Elite Basketball League. And it's an honor to be here with all of you today.
Nice. Okay, I think we're just going to kick it off with the questions right away. And the first question's for Sam. You inspired our people with the brand and put our people on the map within Nike. How did this start, and what inspired you to create N7?
Thank you for that question. Before I answer that question, though, I have a question for our DJ. If I scream really loud, can I get a jersey? So I had a... I took advantage of an opportunity, and when I talk to youth like you, I always say you never know what happens when you take advantage of an unforeseen opportunity. And so I took the opportunity to write a one-page business plan, present it to the leaders at Nike, because at the forefront of everything that I do, I put my community at the forefront. And I'll just circle that back with that very first day when Nike said, yes, we want to give you the ability to create an opportunity for us to help inspire Indigenous youth. I sat at my desk that day, and There's a catalog on my desk, and it had a picture of Michael Jordan. And if any of you are fans of Michael Jordan, there's a famous game that he played, which was called the flu game. And he had the flu, and he was sweating. And they took a picture of that, his face and his eyes, and they put it in the Jordan footwear catalog. And so I was flipping through the catalog first day, wondering what the heck I was going to do after I wrote this business plan, and had no idea how I was going to execute it. I grabbed that photo out of that catalog, and I stuck it on the billboard right in front of my desk. Because at that moment in time, I knew I was no longer working for myself and my family. I was working on behalf of the 4.3 million indigenous youth that were across Turtle Island, across there. And so if I failed, I was failing on you, not on me, because I can go get another job. But I knew that it was those eyes of determination reminding me every single day that when I show up to work, I'm working on behalf of all of you. And now 27 years later, I'm still there. So.
Thank you, Sam. Next question will be for Silent Rain. You've made the All Pac-12, Honor Roll, and the All-Region team, just to name a few of your accomplishments. Can you talk about your role and what your culture has played in your success?
Yeah, so I was first introduced to sports at a very young age. I was about 4 years old. I started playing softball for Intertribal Sports. It's this organization down in San Diego that brings a bunch of tribes together and holds sporting events. There's softball, basketball, flag football, and that was where I was first introduced to softball. I was playing t-ball with all my boy cousins. I was the only little girl out there. So that was where my passion for softball first started. Then I went and played for the little local league right near my reservation that I grew up on. My culture has always been a big part of my childhood growing up. I was going to gatherings, participating in the cultural dances and the cultural games, and as softball got a little more serious, schedules would conflict and I wasn't able to go to as many cultural events. And I remember one of my uncles saying to me, like, your culture is always going to be here for you, but like, go pursue your passion and your dreams to play softball. So I went and did that, got a college scholarship at the University of Washington, and then just finished up my first season playing professionally. But I know that my culture is always there for me, and it's always a part of me, so when I go home, I get to experience that, but I also get to pursue my passion of playing pro softball.
Sweet. Thank you, Simon. Next question will be for Michael. You've had such a successful career in basketball, from being one of the best in the world at 3x3 to playing on the Saskatchewan Rattlers. You run a program that teaches players how to be a champion on and off the court. What are some of those lessons you can share with us youth so that we can all be champions?
Yeah, thank you for that question. Sport has taught me a lot of things that when we grow up and we hear how beneficial sport is, and that, you know, when you're done playing sport, or a lot of the lessons you can learn from playing sport, how that transfers into everyday life. And winning a championship is something that is very difficult to understand unless you've done it before. And winning a championship is different from winning a game. And when you take a lot of those learning experiences, and one of the things, like if I were really to break it down, one of the biggest things is discipline. You have to have discipline. Like, for example, like all of you here are leaders. You're leaders in your community, and something inspired you. But inspiration may be one thing that gets you going, but it's the discipline that's going to keep you going. And so all the discipline that all of you have already for being leaders in your community, you know, that's something that I learned from sport and winning a championship. And when you take those lessons, when you're sitting around the table and when you're learning how to not only negotiate, but, you know, come to terms with certain decisions that you have to make as a collective for the greater good, sometimes you may not agree with those who are sitting around the table, just like you may not have the best relationship with some of your teammates. And so you learn a lot of that from playing sport. And so by playing sport, having that discipline is one of the biggest things. And outside of that is consistency. making sure whatever it is your craft is or whatever it is you're doing, that you stay consistent to do that. So staying disciplined to be consistent will help you be successful in really whatever you choose or whatever you decide. And one of the biggest things I didn't realize until I retired was how physical activity really impacted my mental health. I didn't realize because it was something I took for granted because I was doing it every day, numerous times a day. And once I stopped, I realized that I was getting into a little bit of a lull, so to speak. And so what I realized is, how important movement is for us, whether you play sports recreational or competitively, or if you don't even like sports, but being physically active is so crucial for our overall well-being. And within my teachings, we talk about, the medicine wheel and all-encompassing in our holistic wellness and well-being. Physical activity is a component of that. And prior to European contact, all of us and our ancestors were active from sun up to sundown. So it's something when we're decolonizing ourselves that we have to implement into our daily lives.
Thank you, Michael. Let's give it a round of applause for all three of them again. I think now that we're going to take some questions from the crowd, from whoever wants to ask. Yeah. Hands. That person right there in the green.
Hello, my name is Omish Devi Foster. I'm Lakota Sioux, Blackfeet, and Assiniboine. I myself would say that I love physical activity, and I guess kind of going into talking about our youth is how can we encourage our youth to get active again, rather than like moving themselves away from that. And I want them to feel comfortable in their body, and I want them to feel comfortable with their spirit. And I think that comes with physical activity. But when we don't have a lot of those examples in our community where we are getting out and we're running, or we even have those safe environments, because I grew up in Rosebud, South Dakota, and down there it's not safe for kids to even play outside. They don't have access to stuff like that. How can we go about pressuring our tribes to be making more outlets for that? We have Rosebud IHS, their diabetes program, but that still goes to fail because I would say there's not enough pressure into those programs either. And so when we start these outlets, how can we maintain that in our communities?
I think the biggest thing for me, and looking back on my life when I was younger, is I always thought about instances such as that where this needs to happen, or why doesn't anybody do this? And what I realized is that it's more impactful when it is coming from younger people, when you take the initiative. And so you have a lot of us, as we get older, and this is just my experience in life, is we tend to become molded into kind of the conformities of society. As young people, your clay hasn't hardened yet, so to speak. So the impact that you have with your voice, with your ideas, is bringing that to the forefront. So be the change you want to see in your community, and advocating for these programs that you speak to. So in creating it yourself, and I'll give a very small example. When I was a kid, I used to get teased. I went to pretty much a predominantly Caucasian school in an urban setting. I was teased for having long hair. Just wanted to be proud of who I was. Fast forward, I'm an adult, have 4 children. 2 of my boys have long hair. And a lot of other parents were complaining on social media with the experiences that they were suffering with their own children in the school systems. And so I decided to host a gathering called Boys with Braids. And this was to encourage and motivate these young men to continue on their journey of being proud of who they are. And there was nobody that had ownership over that. Boys with Braids has taken on a spirit of its own. And so growing up and creating programs or initiatives, sometimes I realized that if you want something done, you have to do it yourself. Rather than us waiting or relying on somebody, sometimes we just have to do it ourselves. And so all of our communities, all of our experiences, we grow up with that diversity, and nobody can say they know exactly what you're going through or what your community is going through. You are the expert in your community, and with taking those initiatives and creating those programs, put forth those ideas and hold those people in those positions accountable.
Yeah, well said, well said. Great question. We'll take another question from back there in the blue.
Hi, my name is Amber Mantuavi Hubert. I was really excited for this discussion. I played college basketball, just Division II, but still. I wanted to ask you guys, what are some ways you, as athletes and just as people, work towards your mental health? Because in my experience, yes, physical activity is good for your mental health, but sports, when you're at that next level, can be difficult and you can feel those pressures. So I was just wondering how you guys deal with that, or did.
Well, I want to share a story real quick, because that's what your elders do. They tell stories, right? So being the elder up here, I'll tell a story. But I had the fortunate opportunity to work with a young lady by the name of Lakota Beatty. Anybody in here know Lakota? Her story is very, very powerful. And tomorrow, my public service announcement shooter, our N7 collection comes out tomorrow at retail featuring Lakota Beatty, and we're going to tell her story. But when you watch the little video clip, it's going to talk about the basketball was medicine to her. And if you know her story, you know that her teammate and her sister and her longtime best friend committed suicide. And it wasn't for basketball and sport to keep her grounded in who she is and what she represented and her family. She may not be here with us today as well. And I was able to go on a speaking tour with Lakota as we told her story. The documentary is called Lakota. It's out. You can Google on Lakota Beatty on the thing and watch her video. But to your point, it's like mental health is dive into what I learned from Lakota is you have to embrace the sport itself, because it will help you heal. It'll help you to truly help you heal. So I just share that story with you, one, recent, because you guys can watch it. It's coming out tomorrow on various social media outlets. And Lakota will probably share it herself if you follow her on Instagram. I'm sure she'll have it posted. And then Lindy Waters III is going to be the other athlete that's going to be part of that campaign starting tomorrow morning when the collection comes out. But that's the story I wanted to share with you. It's so powerful, and I think all of us can learn something from Lakota's journey and where she's at. She's now in Amsterdam playing professional basketball. Otherwise, she probably would have been here with us today. But I'll leave you with that and let Silent and Michael share their story in the same space.
Yeah, so mental health has been a very big topic in college athletics right now, but I went through something my senior year where I wasn't playing how I wanted to play. I wasn't getting the playing time that I wanted to, and I really started questioning myself and what I was doing. Why am I still here? Like, do I want to take my 5th year playing softball? But the summer before going into my 5th season at Washington, I realized that I'm more than my sport. I have my faith, I have my culture, I have my family, and that's kind of how I got out of the low, I guess you could say I was in. I started to look at softball as more of an outlet and a place where I would go to have fun and be with my friends and just embrace that time, that last year that I had. And of course, there were times when I was like, I'm not hitting how I want to be hitting, or just things like that. But realizing that I am more than my sport and not taking it for granted.
If I may, could I ask you to stand for that question? Yes. Could we give her a round of applause? Thank you. By saying only D2, it doesn't matter. You know, there's only a small percentage of athletes that actually make it to that level. So, you know, that's a big accomplishment for you. So, congratulations. For me, what I would say when you're an athlete or when you're playing at a high level and within our culture, one of the teachings for us is, as I mentioned before, is the medicine wheel or having the 4 quadrants. So when you're working towards how do you keep your mental health, in our language there's a saying, wakotawin, and it kind of means like the interconnectedness of everything. So when you think about your personal self, what our belief is that you consist of those 4 quadrants, the emotional, spiritual, mental, and physical. And so you want to make sure that you're filling each of those quadrants, because if you take one of those out, for example, like let's just say we take out our physical health and you try to roll that wheel through life, there's going to be a little bit of a wobble. If you take 2 of those out, you're going to come to a flat stop in a point in your life. Then it's going to take a lot of momentum to get rolling again. Then you're going to come to a stop. So if you can work to have all of those quadrants fulfilled, then you'll be able to roll over the obstacles that are put in front of you.
Wow. Powerful stuff, huh?
Yeah, nice. Thank you, guys. I think we'll take another question right here. Yeah, good.
So, right now I'm a student athlete. I play rugby, but all through high school I could never find a sport that really made me feel connected to like who I was. So I went through 2 years playing basketball, and then my final year I tried wrestling. It was amazing, but I couldn't find that community that I needed that made me feel like I belonged. So when I joined rugby, it totally feels different because I'm able to connect with all different types of people who, some of my teammates come from Australia or London or all across the world, and then I get to play with people who are from here as well. I was just asking, in this kind of day and age when there's so many different people around, how do you make bonds that connect between cultures in a type of sport that is global?
I think for me, in my experience, would be...
Go to the vet and answer the question. What? We're going to the veteran over here. Answer the question.
No, in my experience, I think the cultural exchange and seeing differences and similarities will help to create some connection. And with, we have some global representatives here, and to be able to see some of the culture that they have and finding some of those similarities, I think is where we can find connection, especially within a global sport such as yours. One of the things that I found when I traveled the world playing the sport I loved was just that. When I was in different territories, was understanding the culture and the traditions and getting off the beaten path of the tourist areas. So anytime I had teammates, and it also gave me an opportunity to break down a lot of the stereotypes. Just in brief, like growing up in the city I grew up in, there was a lot of racism towards Indigenous people. And I grew up hearing all Indians are drunks in my city. And my mother is an alcoholic to this day. Both of my grandparents died of alcoholism, and a lot of my family struggled with it. So I couldn't defend when I heard that as a young kid growing up. So I made that decision when I was young to abstain from drugs and alcohol. So not once have I ever tasted a drop of alcohol or experimented with any type of drug. And so, thank you. But it gave me the opportunity with my teammates to break down a lot of those stereotypes that they grew up hearing. So I think if you can find, some of that cultural exchange within the upbringings, it could create some connection.
Wow. Well, I just got to make a comment. Like, I'm going to be a little selfish with all of you up here. How lucky am I to get to work with these guys every single day? Taboo has been part of the N7 family forever. And you think about the athletes that I get to be around. And what brings us all together is two common things. One, we're proud to be Indigenous. And two, we love sport. And that's why it brings us all together here. And by the way, I think they like sneakers too, but I'm not going to speak on their behalf. But I just wanted to make that comment that sport is something that bonds you together, that nothing else. When you're on a team, you're together as a team, and that's what sport does. I mean, it's proven with in South Africa what Nelson Mandela did there around bringing a country together around a game, the game of soccer, the global football. And so I just think as Indigenous people, we already naturally do that. Of course, we're always proud of who we are and where we're from, and that's one thing I've always taken in my journeys through life. And then sport is that common denominator, at least for our world in the N7 world, because we all love sport. We all love sport, passion for sport, and it's my job as the GM and visionary of N7 to deliver it to all of you. So I want to just make sure that you all have access to sport. So I want to just leave it with that. Shooter, what do you think?
Yeah, it was amazing. Yeah, everything was awesome. Great questions. Or is that it? We're good? All right.
They cut Shooter off. Look at that. Cut him off.
I didn't know where to look for the time was up. Sweet. All right.
Hey, just give it up for Shooter. He did a great job. He was nervous. Give it up for him. He did a great job.
Yeah. Thank you guys. Lots of good odds. What do you guys want to say?
Yeah.
See you. Yeah.
Okay, guys. See you later.
All right. Is this on? Hello? Okay. All right, everybody. We're going to go into our 15-minute break, but a couple of housekeeping rules. If you have any trash on your table, please do take them to the trash bins, as well as stand up, stretch, mingle, because we do have another panel coming up soon. So, again, your 15-minute break.
Produced by the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services.